We're Just Got Played, and today we are gaming through mechanisms. So, what does that mean? All right, so we like to talk about board games, and we like to classify board games and talk about how you interact with the board games. And so we call those mechanisms the different ways that you can interact with a board game. So specifically today, we're talking about a mechanism called auction. So auctions are, as old as time. Auctions, as far as I know, could be as old as board games, right? People have been taking a collection of stuff and then using some process to transfer that stuff to the highest bidder. People have been doing that for a long time, right? You've got all kinds of different auctions. You've got Dutch auctions where the price counts down until somebody buys it. You've got silent auctions. You've got auctions where people submit a sealed bid. You've got the most common type of auction where people, just sort of keep raising the price until it sells. And some of those are even now computer assisted today, right? Like eBay or whatever. So it's interesting. Some of these auction games have several different auction mechanisms combined into one in a game. And, I talk about this being a mechanism that is old, as can be. But just recently, even we saw a new take on it, right? We saw auctions with compensation in the game Furnace, which, I had not seen that before. I think that's probably new. So it's sort of amazing that auctions, something that's been around for thousands of years, probably, there's still new spins on that being applied in the board game industry. So yeah. All right. Well, anyway, today we're going to talk, each of us are going to talk about our two favorite games that feature auction as a mechanism. And we're also going to tell you the people's choice from people in our Facebook group and Discord who voted on what they thought were the best auction games. All right, so let's. Oh, and also, I just have to mention. Okay, maybe you don't like auctions. Don't go running away from the video because Lloyd is here, and Lloyd also hates fun, and we'll be giving you two auction games that he likes, even though he doesn't like auctions. All right, let's get started. Erock, why don't you tell us what is your favorite auction game?
Okay, so. Not to go too far off on a tangent here, but I'm not actually going to talk about my two favorite games because I've talked about them ad infinitum, and I also feel like there's a strong probability that one or two of them may be mentioned today anyway. So I'm going to talk about a couple of other auction games. Right off the bat, when the term auction comes up, the first thing that comes to mind is what you think of, like sitting in front of an auctioneer. They're putting things out there and people bid on things like that. That's the most obvious definition of this. But the two games that I'm going to talk about tonight are actually a little bit off of that, but still feature an auction mechanism. And the first one I'm going to talk about tonight is Cyclades. I like Cyclades a lot. All right. So in Cyclades, it's basically an ancient Greek warring states kind of game. And everybody plays a different tribe, we'll say, and you start in a little space, and it's a whole bunch of islands spread out everywhere. And every round, you shuffle up the gods, and you put them into spaces. And then you can bid on those gods. And it has the same kind of bidding mechanism as Vegas Showdown, where I might bid 1 on Ares. And then on your turn, you can bid 2 on Ares and knock me off. Now I have to bid somewhere else. So I'll bid 1 on Hades. And then on Tiffany's turn, she bids 2 on Hades, bumps me off. Now I got to bid something else. So this is the kind of auction game that is. It features these different gods that do different things. Like Ares is the god of war, so he lets you move troops around and basically fight. Poseidon's the god of the water, of course, so he lets you make navies and ports and move that stuff around. So it features these different gods. Fish? Yes, but don't tell anybody. So these different gods let you do these different things. Build armies, build navies, collect things like philosophers and priests. Priests make it a whole lot easier to bid later on in the game, but don't do a whole lot now. Philosophers are important basically for one thing. Before I get too deep into what's going on here, one of the reasons I absolutely love this game is because it's one of those knife fight in a phone booth kind of games, except it's not really a phone booth. It's more like a knife fight in a pool hall. Okay, so you have a lot of this space to move around in, but at the end of the day, the winner's going to be the first person to get 2 metropolises. That's it. Whoever gets 2 metropolises first wins the game. And the way you can do this is either by gathering 4 philosophers, boom, that's a metropolis. Or building all 4 of the different building types in the same space, that's a metropolis. Or just going and killing somebody else and grabbing their metropolis. So, essentially, that's this game. And I really like it because it's relatively short. It's about an hour, give or take, which is surprising because there's a whole lot of really interesting choices to be made here. And, it really comes down to the bidding. It's almost like you know what you're going to do once you have your god. And they're very specific. If I win Ares this round, I'm the only one moving troops. So if you don't get Ares and you want to move troops, too bad. You can't do that. So it really simplifies the whole game down into these very specific actions you can do depending upon the god that you get, which, as I said, is the main idea here, is the bidding for the gods in the beginning. And that's why this is one of my favorite auction games, Cyclades.
I haven't played that, but auctions are one of my favorite game mechanisms, so I would totally be down for a game of that.
It's a lot of fun.
Now, however, when somebody says auction games to me, there is a game that comes to my mind immediately. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I think it's sort of the quintessential auction game because it is really distilled to that experience. And so my number one game is For Sale.
Boom. Thank you, Steve. That's one of my actual favorites. So
yeah. Well, I will tell you that when we get to my number 2 game, I'm going to go off script because I couldn't decide between 2, and those are both the people's choice. So I'm just going to pick something completely different. But anyway, I'll pull an Erock later. But for number 1 is For Sale, and there's 2 different versions of For Sale now. The games are. You should play them the same. One is real estate, one is cars. The cars one has some extra stuff that you should absolutely ignore and just play it like the real estate version. The advisors, don't play with the advisors. They're awful. But there's basically played in 2 phases. So in the first phase, you start with some money and you need to acquire, I'll say, cars. So what happens is, say you've got 4 players, 4 cars are turned up and somebody starts a bid. All right, I'll pay 4. And you're not bidding on a specific car. You're basically bidding on the right to stay in the round. And so the next person has to either raise the bid or drop out, right? And if they drop out, they just take the lowest. All the cars have a value, and they're all uniquely valued in increasing order, right? So you take the lowest valued one that's out there if you just drop out and don't place a bid. Even if you're the first person, you're just like, I'm not going to bid at all and take the lowest one. You could do that. If you had placed a bid and it comes back around to you and you decide to drop out, you lose half of your money. Different rules say rounded up or rounded down, so play that however you want. But you lose half that money and then you get whatever the lowest car is. And if you're the last person standing, you have to pay your full bid amount, but you get the most valuable car. And so you do that until you have a collection of cars. And then in the second phase of the game, checks are put out, 1 check for each player, and so they might be 0 value check or a 14 value check or whatever, those will be out. And then everybody simultaneously chooses a car from their hand, puts it face down. And then once everybody's got one, you flip it over and you just distribute the checks based on, the values of cars that were bid. So you could get stuck with a crappy car in the first part of the game. But then in the second part of the game, there could be a round where the checks are all really close in value. So you just throw out your crappy car because you're going to get one of those, pretty good checks anyway compared to what everybody else is getting. So it's got interesting little twists and stuff going on. But it's very simple, plays really quick, plays up to 6 players, which is nice for my group. And yeah, if people haven't played auction games, that's the one that I will use to introduce them to them. I mean, everybody sort of knows what an auction is, but this is different, right? This isn't just I'll bid 5, I'll bid 6, hammer sold, right? This has got a little bit more depth to it than that. And so, yeah, the game that I will always play this game. One of my favorites, For Sale.
Me too. I would always play For Sale. I agree. It scales really well. It's short. It's fun. It's easy to understand. It's great.
Yeah. Good times.
I've only played the car one, and we just played that, and I completely. It's not on my list because I forgot I played it until you said it. Even though you talk about it all the time, I forgot I played it recently, the car one.
Did you play with the advisors?
We did, yeah. We played by the
rules. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I
don't know.
Really feel
one of my advisors got me like it turned one of my 0 checks into like a 10,000 or 15,000, whatever. So I was happy with it. Screw
it. It adds some chaos. I think the game
does
need, and it makes the game a lot longer. There's a whole nother round where you get the advisors, and then you have to apply the advisors, and I don't know. It sort of ruins the experience for me. But I feel like they really dropped the ball. If you buy For Sale Autorama in the rule book, it doesn't explain how to play just For Sale without the advisors. Like it doesn't even have it there in the end as a variant. Like just play without round one advisors. Yeah,
it's really simple. Just don't play that round. That's all.
Yeah. I don't know why they didn't do that. I definitely knocked the game's rating just for that.
Yeah, our group didn't seem to like it because they played For Sale before, and they kind of thought that the extra round added extra time that wasn't needed, and like they just didn't really like the advisors. And a lot of times you got stuck with an advisor that you couldn't use. It was just like, oh well, I wasted money on this guy and I can't even use him. So
yeah, and they made a separate version of the advisors to apply to their real estate For Sale game if somebody wanted to, but do not do that. All right. So Lloyd, our resident person who doesn't really like auction games, what is the first game that you think is a good auction game?
So while sitting here, I changed my pick on the fly because I didn't think of this as an auction game. So I'm going to go with this one first. Because I was originally going to mention Raccoon Tycoon because it's simple and it was simple and it was quick. So that was enough to push it over the edge for me. But I'm going to get rid of that one because I've only played it once. And I'm actually going to substitute that for one that I think is better and I actually have a good time with, which is Stockpile. So in Stockpile, you are all investment stockbrokers, and you have essentially it's broken down into kind of 2 rounds. You have a round where you're getting cards, and you know what those cards are, right? You get a stock, and well, take that back. The cards they give you are different stocks or different things that are going to, like power cards that are going to make certain things go down or make certain things go up, or taxes. So you get that first, and you take those cards and you kind of precede the different tracks that you're going to be bidding on with a handful of cards. And then the players are going to take turns putting their cards into 1 or 2 piles, face up or face down. I think one has to go up and one has to go down. So there's some limited information, and that's kind of the first round. The second round, also you're going to each get a stock, and I forget how many stocks in the game. There's like 6 stocks. There's different colors, and you're also going to get a bit of information of whether it's going to go up or down or whatever. So, and only you have that information. And then on the board, everyone gets public information of one of the stocks and what's going to happen to it. So everyone's got their own private information about a specific stock and then public information on one stock. So you kind of combine that together to put your stocks out on the board, and try to seed decks that you want to bid on and try to trap other people into bidding on something that's going to be terrible. And then it uses the... it's kind of like it's almost like a worker placement. I don't know what style of bidding that is, but basically it has a bunch of spots from like 0 to 10 or whatever the values are. And you can put your little marker on one of those spots on any of those stacks. And then basically if no one outbids you, you get it for whatever you bid it on. But if they do outbid you, it knocks you back off. And then in the next round of bidding, you put your little meeple, your little marker somewhere else. Once you're done with that, you collect your stacks, whatever they are. You take a look at what's happened and you collect money. You get various. There's. I think I might be confusing this with another game, but there's also resources in the game, right? Like you're collecting different commodities like gold, or is that a different game?
I don't think so in Stockpile.
Yeah, I think that's a different game.
That's just the stock. I'm trying to think what game that is now because it's something similar where you're collecting the resources. I thought it was in this one because it's a similar mechanism where you're bidding
Raccoon
on stuff.
Tycoon has resources.
No, it's not that. No. This is one where you're like trying to. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's an expansion in that one. It's one of the expansions for Stockpile. Okay. I'm sorry. It is in there. They added commodities. So they actually have one big expansion where it adds random dice rolls to do whether things are going to go up and down. But in one of those expansions, it adds commodities where you're basically doing set collection. It's not in the base game. We won't talk about it. So yeah, you collect your stocks, you adjust the board, and when the stocks on the board go to a certain thing, you can cash out to get money before they crash, or you can hold on to them. If you get there's like spots where you can split your stock, where you can double them. They're worth extra money, but then everyone knows you have them, so now people might start short selling those to drive the value down. So it's a quick game. It's pretty fast gameplay. There's not a lot of rules. It's just kind of putting stuff down and then bidding on it. And I mean, there's some strategy to it, but it's really kind of just like stuff flying everywhere. At the end, dust settles and someone's got the most money. And like I said, I kind of like it because that's really all there is to the game. You're not bidding to do something else like in a power grid where if you flub your bid on something on the auction, you're just hosed for the whole round. It's 5 or 6 rounds depending on your players, and you can constantly get in or out off of a lucky stock doubling or whatever. So Stockpile.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's fun.
I've played several auction games, like you mentioned, Stockpile, and I played Master of Commerce, which is the early version of another game that's a lot more popular. I can't remember the name of right now. And there's, I don't know, there's a bunch of auction games and I get them all confused sort of in my head. So you're talking and I'm like, wait, which one's which, et cetera, I guess, because I've just played them all just a few times. Right. So it's funny, well, they're auction games. So of course I get them confused, but all right. Stockpile. And I never heard of the expansion even. So that's interesting. Cool. Commodities. All right. So let's move on to our second pick. And I guess we'll just go back and start with Erock again.
Okay. So this is another one that's kind of often left field as far as auction games go. But I really enjoy this game. Again, not my top 2, but it's in my top. And this game is called Dungeon Petz. I like Dungeon Petz a lot. I think it's a really cool idea of which, and it's kind of like, all right, so the story goes, Vlada put a game out called Dungeon Lords, and that game was fairly popular. And the guy who made the art for that did a really awesome job. That is a super cute game. The art's fantastic. And the rumor is that Vlada made Dungeon Petz just to give this guy more work to do because he liked his art so well. So this is that game. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but in Dungeon Lords, you're building a dungeon and filling it with different things so that when the adventures come, you can basically beat them off. So like I put in certain traps to beat off certain ones, and I'll put in certain monsters that'll scare the other ones, that kind of a thing. So the point of this game is you're a breeder or a collector or a seller or however you want to look at it of these pets that would end up being monsters in the dungeons in Dungeon Lords. Now, it's not connected. Like, you're not playing both games together. It's just the idea of what's going on here. And basically, you're playing a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's in a fun way. It's in a cutesy, fun way. You're playing somebody that sells monsters to somebody who builds a dungeon to scare off and beat up on crusaders and stuff like that. So it's a little bit, but like I said, it's in a fun way. So in this game, you have a group of minions. They're called your family of minions or whatever. And they go out on the board and they do things like get more cages or get things for your pets or get more pets and things like that. And the way it works is at the beginning of every round, you take your entire family of minions and you spread it out however you want to go and do different actions. So, and I know that's not very descriptive, but let's say I have 10 minions in my family Okay. Now I can split that up however I want to do actions. I can put one guy out 10 times for 10 actions that only have one guy in them. Or I could do like all 10 in one spot. That's only going to be one action, but I got 10 in there. Or I could do like a 5, a 3, a 2, etc. However I want to split them up. Now the number of times I split them up is going to be the number of actions that I get. And what happens is you're going to go by who goes first is the one that bid the most. So if I put 10 in a spot, I'm definitely going first, but I only get that one action. Whereas if I have 10 ones lined up in a row, I'm going last. And I'm probably not even going to get that many actions because there's not going to be enough spaces taken out. So here's really the rub of this game is trying to split up your family to get to the most spaces that help you out the most in any particular round. All right. I really, really like this auction style because it really puts pressure on you to make these hard decisions. Like, how important is it that I get there? Because if I bid high enough, I absolutely can get that one space that I actually need to run the rest of my turn. But if I bid too high, now I can't afford to do these other actions, and I didn't really do anything this turn. So I really, really like this mechanism in this game. I'm going to be honest with you. This game's kind of brutal, okay? Don't walk into this thinking, oh, that sounds cute. That's probably pretty light. It's not light. It is very heavy. It's fairly brutal. All of the monsters, the pets that you grow, get progressively more evil as it goes on, and you need to satisfy all their urges and cravings and stuff. And that is fairly heavy, trying to work that system out to do that so that they don't die or run off. Okay. If it sounds interesting, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I'm just saying, put your waders on because this is not a light stream here, man. This is a heavy, you're getting hit by the fire hose. Like, there is a lot. It's heavy, but it's really, really cool. I have a lot of fun playing it. Tiff enjoys it as well. And that is Dungeon Petz.
Nice. Just hearing you talk about how that game works, because I haven't played that one, it just made me think of other auction games. It just made me think, man, I need to do a top 10 auction games. Like this
Right.
was probably the hardest list for me of the ones we've done so far. Like there's just so many.
There's so many good games. It was easy for me to put aside my top 2 and pick 2 other ones. It was easy.
Oh, yeah. Well, so you remember at the top of the episode where I sort of gave a definition of what auction games are? So yeah, I'm gonna list a game that doesn't really fit in that, but it's certainly a bidding game. And well, again, so I talked about for sale. In the first round, it was either raise the bid or take a card, right? And that is basically the entire game for my second pick, which is no thanks. Basically, a card is passed to you, and it has a value between 1 and 35. I think those are the numbers. And you don't want the cards because the cards are negative points. And so you can put one of your chips on the card and pass it along. Say, no thanks, I don't want that. Or you can take the card and all the chips that are on it. The chips are positive points, so it's good. You want the chips because not only do they let you pass worse cards, but also they're points at the end of the game if you have a bunch of them. And that's basically the game. You're collecting these cards. And one trick of it is that if you collect a run of cards, so say I collect the 28, 27, 26, so only the 26 is negative points for me. The 27, 28, I don't have to worry about now. So it can be interesting. You could take a high value card like the 25 or the 35, and then the 34 comes out and you're just like watching everybody pass around because none of them want it. And you're like, I guess I won't take it either. I'll let it go around the table again and collect some more chips before I take it, but maybe somebody will take it anyway. They'll just be like, well, the 33 will come out later. I'll just take it. You're like, so it's real simple. It's fun. And so I think based on the idea that you're basically auctioning to not get the thing it's an interesting mechanism. And well, I should also say, I was talking about the runs of cards. Depending on the player count, I think you take some of the cards out of the deck. So some of the cards are not in circulation. So you can be sitting there. You've got the 33 and you've got the 31 and you're waiting for the 32 to come out and it just never comes. So you can't make that run and you're just, screwed. It wasn't in the game. So anyway, it's a real simple game. You teach it really fast. It plays with a lot of people. I have never taught this to a group and had them play it once. it always gets played 5, 6, 10 times because it's so fast and it's fun. It sort of falls in that party game area because people are just having fun playing it. They don't even necessarily remember who won, when the game is over after you've played so many times. So anyway, I don't know if it fits in the traditional auction box, but to me, it is an auction game. And so that was my out of the box pick for my second, one of my favorite games again of all time. No thanks.
Indeed.
All right, Lloyd, have you got something that's maybe a little more in the auction box?
This one is in the auction box. It's actually got, 4 or 5 different auction types in it. And again, this comes down to it's a strict auction game. And I see, so I came into this saying I don't like auction games, and I really don't. Here's what it is. I don't like games that have auctions in them. I like auction games, it appears. So that might be the difference, because modern art is a auction game, and the sole thing that you're doing is buying and selling art. And the game is based around, you are a museum owner, curator, whatever. You have, I think there's 4 or 5 different artists in each version of the game. They always switch up the art I couldn't find any pictures of the one that I played. I just kept finding all these different arts, but it's all the same game on BGG. They just keep adding new versions of pictures in the game. But essentially, you are trying to collect the most valuable art. How is the art valuable? The art's valuable based on how many are in play at the end of the auction. How does the auction end? When you reach, I think it's 3 of the same art out, or is it 4? It's a specific number. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's 4, whenever there's 4 of that artist out, auction immediately ends. No matter how many turns you had, auction just immediately ends, or the round immediately ends. And then you go around and you count up the second, third, and fourth. And on this little board, you keep track over the rounds of which one was in first and second, third. And each round they have a different payout. And as you collect art, as you go through the rounds, the payouts, I don't know how long the tail is. I don't remember exactly, but something that was worth maybe was in first place on the first round. Maybe it tanked and now it's in 5th place. It still has some tail from the previous round, so you still get some money from it. But I think in like the next round, that tail will fall off from the first round. I don't remember the exact.
It just depends on whether other artists have surpassed it. So it depends on what people play each round. It doesn't tail off automatically. Yeah.
I mean, that factors into the game with what you're trying to bid on. But the reason why I like it is it's fairly fast. Each round, you are given a bunch of cards. The cards themselves are different colors, and they each have a different. Well, they don't each have, but the cards will have different auction types on them. So you don't choose the auction. You choose the card you want to auction. And then on your turn, you put that card out. And depending on the auction type, that's going to happen. And so it's got kind of a hidden bid. Everyone puts the amount of money in their hand. And then, largest bid wins. They have the kind of around the table where I bid 5 and the next person bids 6, and it just keeps going until someone gets it. They have some other like double auctions where you put 2 outs at the same time. And there's a couple of, I think there's like 4 or 5 different auction types in there. And the other catch to the game is not only are you a buyer, you are a seller, you're also a buyer. So you can put a card out hoping that no one else is going to bid on it, or at least bid high, so you can buy it yourself to add it to your collection. And then you just pay the bank. But if someone does buy it, then you get their money. So you have to kind of balance your cash flow out and your cash flow in, and also try to keep track of where everyone else is with money, so that maybe you don't want them to win yours, even though they're going to give you a bunch of money. Maybe you don't want them to have it, so you outbid them and just pay the bank, so the money's kind of taken out of circulation. So there's some weird little stuff. The thing is that it's fast and there's nothing else going on in the game. It's just buying and selling and trying to, figure out which pieces of art are going to go, and timing it out when you're going to do it. So modern art, it's quick, it's simple. There's not a lot going on. So I think, like I said, I don't like games with auctions in them that other things depend on those auctions. I don't mind straight auction games because there's nothing depending on the auction. It's just you're buying and selling, and it doesn't have any ramifications on gameplay. So I think I just discovered something about myself.
Modern art has some sort of meta strategy going on that isn't readily apparent the first time you play it. This idea that, well, sure, I've got some paintings in my original hand and I should just sort of hold on to those to play in the last round or something, right? Like there's various sort of meta strategies. So I think people who have played the game before are going to do better versus, some auction games, you just go in, like, as long as you can appropriately value the stuff, you're in the game. But in modern art, I'm not sure that's the case because of how the scoring works and how things become scarce as people play them or whatever. So there's some interesting stuff there. This is the game that every time I would say For Sale is my favorite auction game, people would say, but have you played modern art? And so, I was actually surprised that this was not one of the People's Choice games. But I did finally get a chance to play it at Dice Tower Con East. And I thought it was going to be better based on how much everybody else hyped it. So it was all right. I would play it again, but it is not in the pantheon with For Sale for me. I'm not even sure it would make my top 10 of auction games. Erock, you've played it too?
Yeah, I don't know if it's because it's better or just that that's the one everybody thinks about. You know what I'm saying? Like, probably most people wouldn't put that as their top 2, but everybody knows modern art, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think Lloyd brought up an interesting point too. That's interesting that it is just a distillation of auctions. There's like 5 different auctions, but that's it. It's just auctions. Whereas like a counterpoint to that is another one that didn't make anybody's list, but I kind of expected, was Power Grid. And Power Grid's like exactly what Lloyd's talking about. Like, the most important thing going on in that game is the bid for the power stations. And everything else in that game rests on how much you paid and which one you've got. And it's incredibly punishing to people who don't know that game, because if you don't understand the value of things, you're going to wipe yourself out of that game. You're going to be so far behind because you paid too much for a power station. Now you can't afford to put anything in it. Or the opposite, where I didn't want to bid, so I ended up with like the worst power station, and now I can't expand very far. So like, that's a really good, I like your train of thought and your realization there. That's all what I'm saying. Kudos to you, sir.
I have played Power Grid and I loathe it. And it's literally because of that very first time I played, I didn't know what to expect. So going into the first round, these other people who had played before just outplayed me and let me overbid. And then I was basically out of the game from the first round because I could never do anything else. I bought something that I couldn't place. I couldn't power it ever. And I just never got in the game. That being said, if you're going to play a Power Grid, I did semi-enjoy the North Korea, South Korea one because you have the 2 markets going on.
Okay.
But that's after I'd already played regular Power Grid a couple times and I knew how to play it. But going into that, it also at the end of the game, it has like that mathy, everyone takes an hour to figure out.
The last turn's brutal.
Yeah, so I also don't like that.
There's also Power Grid, the First Sparks, which is a lot simpler.
I've not played
as bad as what you're describing. It's interesting too. There's also those games that they have auctions in them, and the auctions are very important, but you don't really think of them as auction games. I think one good example of that is El Grande.
I agree. I saw that when I was searching, and I said, that's not an auction game. I said, I don't care. It's not an auction game. I don't care. The
auction is very important. You mentioned before, right? When you were talking about your picks, but in El Grande, you want that to play that high card to get first in turn order to pick, but then that gives you less caballeros to do stuff with, right? So it's got that whole thing going on. And then, the order in which you're going and claiming those cards and doing stuff is super important. But it's an area control or whatever game, right? So, it is interesting. It uses auctions very effectively, but it's not an auction game, right?
Indeed.
So So, but let's talk about two more auction games. I'll say that in the People's Choice, the one that was clearly the winner, there was some back and forth about what should be the second choice, but clearly the winner is, one of my favorite auction games, one of Erock's favorite auction games. I'm salivating over, the new deluxe edition that I'm expecting to get in the mail any day now or month now or whatever. And so this is a Kinesia classic, and this is Ra. So Erock, why don't you tell us a little bit about Ra?
Absolutely. This is probably my favorite auction game out of all of them, which is, I had a feeling, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I didn't talk about this as one of my two picks. I absolutely love this game. If you've watched a handful of our videos, you've probably seen me talk about it, or Steve, once anyway. Ra's just fantastic. It is basically auction and set collection, and that's the entire game. Okay, to put it simply, everybody gets a set of bidding chips. And at the beginning of the game, they're distributed out so that they are theoretically even though they are different numbers. And then from there, chaos ensues. And basically what happens is on your turn, you can either start drawing tiles out of a bag, or you can declare an auction. All right. If you're drawing tiles out of a bag, there's two kinds of tiles. There's basically raw tiles, and there's the rest of the tiles, which are all part of the set collection. And they do very different things. I'm not going to get too far into it, but there's like 6 different things going on with the tiles that you can score points off and things like that. Not going to get too far into it. And then the other set is the raw tiles. And the raw tiles basically go on the top of the board, and they determine the epoch that you're in. And when that fills up, that's it. That epoch is over. I don't care how much you've actually managed to buy or not buy. That's it. It's over. And we do a little reset and we move on to the next. And the way the auctions work is either somebody declares an auction, or what is it? One of the raws? The raw declares an auction.
If there's a raw tile drawn, it starts an
auction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and when an auction starts, basically everybody, like I said, everybody has these chips that they use. The number that you have and things depends upon the player count and whatever. But basically, there's also one in the middle of the board. And these chips go from basically 1 to 15, okay? And 15's being the highest. The highest number always wins an auction. All right. And when it's time to start an auction, the first player can put in one of their chips. And whatever number they want to out of their set, they can put out there. And then it basically goes around once. And if you want to, you put out a higher number. And if you don't, you're out. And that's the way it goes. And then whoever puts the highest number out gets all the tiles that have accumulated up to this point, and the new bidding chip that's in the middle that then goes face down for the next round. So that could be a determining factor in what you're bidding as well. If the 15 sitting there on the game board, that's huge. That is a guaranteed win in the next round. So I might bid high to get that, not getting hardly any tiles, just knowing I'm going to be set at some point in the next round. But then again, you never know, because you're drawing out of a bag, and it's entirely possible in the next round we draw a ton of raw tiles and end the round early, or the epoch or whatever, and I never even got to use the 15. And that's the way that goes. So I really, really love the way that this works. I don't think you really get this game until you've played it 4 or 5 times. I think you can play it on your first play. I think it's fairly simple. It's easy to sit down and play this game, but I think it really takes 4 or 5 times to really start seeing the underlying currents that move this game. And at that point, it really, really shines, and I love this game. It's probably my favorite Kinesia game. This is my favorite auction game, raw.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complexity, like you said. So one of the things you didn't mention is some of the tiles that you can draw are negatives.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
They can negate some of the stuff you have. But so, if I don't have any civilization tiles and there's a negative civilization tile out there, like, I don't care. That's not negative.
Doesn't hurt me.
So that sort of makes the value different to different people, even though the set collection does that naturally too. But also, if you're like the last person standing, you can just sort of try to fill up that row. Just keep filling it up, and you're the last person with a bid token, and just hope you don't trigger the end of the epoch, right?
Yeah,
so you're sort of pushing
like,
your luck
just
there.
Don't crap out. That's all.
Hoping you don't draw something out of the bag that's a negative to you, hoping you don't crap out, and so that's always a fun, the end of the epoch, that one person sort of pushing their luck at the end. But also, yeah, some of those strategies, like if I have a low bidding chip and say somebody wins an auction with the 15, so now the 15 is on offer, I will just start an auction on the 15 with no tiles out, right?
It's worth my
one.
Yeah,
if nobody wants to spend something to get it, fine. I'll spend my 2 or 3 just to have the 15 for next round. I don't care. But if somebody wants to use a higher thing than that, good. That just made my 2 or 3 more valuable, right? So, yeah, some of those things that you can do in that game that just sort of develop over, playing over time, are cool interactions that I'm not sure were designed that way on purpose, but just have evolved that way. So yeah, Ra, the people's choice.
We've played Raw a few times. I was just in a Discord chat with the group, and somebody was like, "Oh, I hate that game. It's the worst." And I was like, "It's not offensive. Like, I won't turn down. I won't walk away from it."
High praise.
It's a pure auction game, really.
Yeah.
So it falls in that category.
It sticks around a little too long for what it's doing for me. I'm not a big. It's okay. It's not offensive. I'm like, I'll vehemently deny any version of Power Grid if it tries to come out. But if they want to recommend Raw, I'll be like, yeah, I'll play Raw. I'm fine with that.
I mean, you could probably play 3 games of For Sale in the time it takes to play Raw once. So
that's true.
I get
it's just a little long. It's okay though. I mean, I don't mind it. It's just,
All right.
It's almost organically long because it really depends on your group. Some groups will call a lot of auctions and really slow the game down, and sometimes they won't, and they'll just kind of draw until there's a bunch of stuff there, and then before you know it, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, somebody can have AP, right? Every time it gets
on top of everything else,
so because there is a lot to think about, more than you might expect on the surface of the game. There's a lot of calculations essentially you can do. All right, so that was the number 1 people's choice. So I mentioned that the number 2 people's choice, our Facebook poll, was close, maybe tied for a few different games. But then when I factored in what people said in the Discord, this game pulled ahead into second place. It's one of my favorite games of all time as well. Again, shocking. And this is Keyflower. So Keyflower it's got a bunch of different mechanisms in it. It's a worker placement game. It's an auction game. It's a tile placement tableau building game. It's got pick up and deliver in it even, so there's a lot of different mechanisms at play. But I think that at the heart, I could see somebody making an argument that this is an auction game, right? What I like about it though is simultaneously, while you're doing the auction, you are doing the worker placement. So on your turn, you have to decide, am I going to use my workers to put them somewhere to activate something, or am I going to use them to bid on something? You want to jump out and bid on things early, because not only does that mean you could theoretically get it for less because a lower bid, somebody has to outbid you, but also as a quirk of this game, all of your workers come in different flavors. You have like red, green, blue, yellow. And once you establish that a certain type of worker is going to be used on a tile, whether it's the worker placement or the auction, then now that's what's set for the round. So I may know that Lloyd has a ton of blue workers, and I just stick 2 red ones on there as the auction. Now he can't come in with a bunch of blue and snake that tile for me, right? Because it's just
or use it
that it's red, or even use it. Although it's interesting, you don't mind people using the tile that you're bidding on, because then you get those workers at the end of the round. But so that whole establishing the color, that really adds that tension, right? Otherwise, like, why would you bother jumping out doing the auction? Why not just do the worker placement? Well, because you want to establish the color, that's why. And but then, okay, so why don't you just do all auction and not worker placement? Well, worker placement is tough. People can block you. They don't entirely block you, but they make it harder for you, right? So if Lloyd places 1 blue worker on something, even in my own area, he can place it in my private area, which is not so private apparently, and place it in to activate one of the tiles that I've won in a previous round. And now if I want to activate it again, I've got to put 2 or 3 or whatever blue workers workers, right? So I can activate it, but I have to use more resources. So yeah, it's very thinky, like what, there's all this stuff you want to do and you're not going to get to do it all. So what's priority here? But it is definitely a different spin on auctions because of the color of the worker establishment and the fact that it's going on simultaneously with the worker placement. And I'm not sure. I can't think of any games that do either of those things, much less both of those things. But it is really, other than Key to the City, London, which is just another version of Keyflower.
Other than their other games, right?
Yeah. But it really is just fascinating and fun to me. Those are the kind of fun, crunchy decisions that I like. Are you guys fans of Keyflower?
I thought about this. I thought about making this one of my top 2, but it's been too long since I've played. I don't think I could really do it justice as far as it goes. But I'm so interested in it. We recently got it. Thanks, Mom and Dad. So hopefully we're going to get that going soon. I believe there is an unboxing video on the channel. So
it is. Well, it's in the queue. We haven't released it yet, or maybe.
Depends on when you're watching this. Really.
Yeah, depends on when you're watching it, right?
Exactly. So we did an unboxing. So hopefully we're going to get that to the table soon. It's been maybe 10 years since I played it. So I just didn't feel like I did it justice. And like I said, it's on my list. So kudos.
This is one of those games that I played first digitally, like maybe on Tabletopia or something, and then bought a copy of it because I liked it so much. Yeah. So go make digital versions of your games.
Yeah, I agree.
Lloyd, have you tried this one?
I played it once, I think right when it came out, and playing it once isn't really good because there's a lot like that whole system is something you have to kind of wrap your brain around. And so I was like, I got skunked. I got like destroyed. And I was just like, I'm good. I don't need to play that again. I didn't really like it.
See, the first time I played it, we were all new. So
yeah,
we were
that's
all sort of in the
nice.
same boat, and that probably helped.
I don't know if who I played it with, if it was their game. So I don't know if it was new for them or if they had played it before. I don't remember. I played it at a game store, and it was someone that they brought it. So I don't know if it was new. It was right around when it came out though. But yeah, I got destroyed, and I really like my memory of it is like there was a lot going on, and I wasn't really grokking it, and I was just kind of floundering in the wind, trying to figure out what was going on. And by the end, I had like 2 points.
Wow.
I agree. This is a different kind of game too, because a lot of games, when you say there's a lot going on, you just mean there's 6 or 7 mechanisms that you're used to that are intermingled into this experience. Whereas Keyflower is a unique experience. I agree. So not only is there a lot going on, but then you have, like you said, you have to wrap your head around, how does this colors work? And I got to bid and do my actions at the same time. Like, it's just a little weird. So,
and I got this tile, but I need to put it by this building because I need to move the stuff from this tile to this tile, and I need
like on top of everything else,
move the stuff from the tile to the tile.
Yes, there is a lot going on there, and it's a unique experience, which is kind of one of the reasons it kind of got back on my radar. I was like, man, I enjoyed that game, and it's just kind of been percolating for like 10 years back there, So, looking forward to it.
So, all right. People's choice picks were Raw and Keyflower. Either one of those could have easily been my number 2, but I cheated and didn't use them. So, but how did they become people's choice? How can you influence the people's choice? Look in the description of the video below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Come to our Discord channel where I'll put the poll there. In Facebook, I'll put the poll there. So you're in our Facebook group. You can, come talk to us there. Leave a comment, YouTube, whatever. And also, if you enjoyed this, give us a like. That helps us out. But until next time, I'm Steven. That's Lloyd. That's Erock. We're from Just Got Played. And we mostly like auction games.
Indeed, yes. Mostly. Mostly, indeed.